Welcome back to the channel. Today what we're going to discuss is why I don't post more videos of me driving my 2004 Dodge Viper. There are 9 things I've got on this list, but there is a lot of overlap between these things, so with that, let's get started. Number 1 is for legal reasons. I do not want to get a knock on my front door from a police officer who is showing up to arrest me for reckless driving, which is a misdemeanor in my state. That means not only when I'm posting, but even when I'm just filming videos, I've got to be very careful about what I choose to show, or alternatively, I have to wait a minimum of a year from the time I film it to the time I can actually post it. That way the statute of limitations expires for reckless driving, but then that creates a huge lag of when I film things to when they get posted, which means not only am I really far behind on what's going on with the car, it just makes my content a lot less relevant because it was filmed over a year ago. But even if I don't get arrested, the probability of even just getting a speeding ticket or any type of ticket is a lot higher in this type of vehicle. Now, as I've mentioned in a few other videos that I've linked below, you get stereotyped as one of the owners of these vehicles, which means not only are you more likely to get pulled over because of the type of car this is, but then if you do, again, you're going to get stereotyped. People always assume you're speeding regardless of whether or not you are, just because of how the car looks. So you're almost guaranteed to get a speeding ticket out of it. Then after that, they can either get a warrant to pull the footage if they see the camera, which can prove that you might not have been exactly behaving while you were driving around, or if they were to find my YouTube channel, they can easily build a case after the fact with old footage to say that I am a habitual offender and use that to try to increase the charges and say that I'm more likely to do this again. So both in the moment and after the fact, it just makes you a lot more likely to have repercussions from a legal perspective. And that brings me to problem number 2, which is that this could impact my day job. Now, I like creating content. I enjoy doing this as a hobby, but at this point, I do not make any money from YouTube. To get paid through YouTube, you have to have a certain number of subscribers, which I don't have, so please subscribe so I can quit my day job, but you also have to have a certain number of hours viewed of your videos per month. I don't meet either of those requirements, but beyond that, in my personal life, in my professional life, I put in a ton of hard work and I've made a lot of sacrifices to get myself into a position where I think I'm finally financially comfortable. I'm not really, really well off, but I'm at least somewhat comfortable and within my means. And I've worked very hard to get here, and I've done a number of other videos about that to show how I've been able to afford my Viper. However, I'm not at a place where I'm either willing or able to just give up my day job and a stable source of income. I'm just not quite there yet. I really wish I was, but that is not the reality. And going back to reason number 1, any misdemeanor charge or arrest would pretty much result in me losing my job. I also have a security clearance for my job, so it's not just that I would lose my job if I get arrested. There's also stipulations for what I have to do to maintain a security clearance that are a lot more stringent. For example, if I get a speeding ticket and it's over a certain dollar amount, I have to self-report it. And the dollar amount is relatively low. It's somewhere around $200, which means around where I live, most of the speeding tickets they have are immediately over that limit. And if I have too many, they can say that this is a clear pattern of, questionable behavior or behavior that shows questionable judgment, and they can deny a security clearance as a result of that, which could potentially impact my job. So beyond the direct financial hit of having to pay for speeding tickets, the fact that even those could potentially impact my employment does not make that level of risk worth the perceived benefit to a YouTube channel that makes me no money. Moving on to item number 3 is safety. It's not only my safety and the safety of the car, but also the safety of other people around me. Now, if I was on a racetrack and I could afford to do that routinely, I would have a closed environment where this would be less of a concern. However, to track the Viper is ungodly expensive. I've gone over this in a number of my other videos. I'll link a few of those below, but basically the recurring costs to maintain it for track use are astronomical, which means I can't afford to do that routinely enough that I can produce a consistent stream of content. And in turn, it means I would have to film things on the street. And one of my biggest pet peeves is if you want to go out and put yourself at risk and your own property at risk, that's one thing. It's really not fair to other people to just put them and their property at risk, especially just because you are doing something stupid in the hope that you can get clicks from people you don't know on the internet. That's not something that I really want to support, and that's not really something that I want to do. That's not fair to the people around me, especially because the Dodge Viper is disgustingly fast, but it is also a known widowmaker. There is no traction control, there's no driver's aids. So the probability of something going wrong and something happening to me or to somebody else, it's just too high, I think, and it's not really worth the risk, especially for the kind of content that people want to see in a car which is usually driving fast. As I've also stated repeatedly on this channel, I have had a very serious head injury before. So if I get into an accident with this car, there is one airbag for the driver, and that is it. It is not the most safe vehicle. If I have another serious head injury, it is a 50-50 coin toss. 50% is I die, and the other 50% is I have permanent brain damage, which means I would literally have a cognitive decline for the rest of my life. We'll just say, have a much lower IQ indefinitely. Both of those outcomes, needless to say, not really great. So I don't want to do that to myself. I especially don't want to do that to somebody else if I accidentally took somebody else out in the process as well. Number 4 is that it could hurt the value of the car. So if people only see me post videos of pulls, even if that's a very, very small percentage of how I drive the car, because that's the only window of content that people see, they assume that I do that the entire time I'm driving this car. So now people assume that the vehicle is beat on. Beyond that, I like to show all the problems and stuff that I have with the car as part of the ownership experience so people know all the flaws. But beyond those things, just driving the car hard, especially if I were to do track use, that's really, really hard on the paint. I put a lot of my own effort and time and money into paint correcting the car and ceramic coating it and stuff. But because of that, the clear coat is now a lot more thin, which means anything that touches the outside paint pretty much immediately scratches it. So if I put a suction cup mount on the outside of my car, it will scratch the outside paint, and that will devalue the car. Now, I justified buying this car partially because it was already at the bottom of its depreciation curve. I was like, I'm never really going to lose money value-wise for what I bought it at versus current market and where I see the market for these going in the future. I didn't buy it as an investment, but I did need some sense that it wasn't going to depreciate $5,000 to $10,000 a year in order for me to justify being able to afford it. That said, if I'm continually devaluing it by posting this kind of content, that doesn't necessarily help my case for being able to keep it. And even though I plan to keep this thing forever, if I do, for whatever reason, have health issues and need to sell it, or if I'm physically unable to drive it, knowing that it's worth a lot less than what I might have into it or what I bought it for, that might be a financial hit that I'm not willing or able to take, especially if I'm in a position where I'm selling it because of health issues. Beyond that, the fact that I can't put a GoPro on the outside of the car, I'll touch on this a little bit, but that really limits the type of content I can produce as well. And that does make the content a little bit more boring because I can only do in-car shots. But a couple of these points bring me to number 5, and that is that video production for in-car footage of driving takes a lot more resources than producing content like this, where I'm in my home office slash, studio. To be clear, I do not call it that, but producing in-car footage, it takes a lot more time, it takes a lot more money. When I bought the car, premium gas was about $2.40 a gallon. Now, regular gas is over $5 a gallon, and premium is getting close to $6 a gallon near where I live. Then, as I said, for why I can't afford to consistently track the car, tires are expensive, brakes are expensive, other consumables and oil changes, stuff like that. This stuff adds up when you're racking up miles, plus the cost of depreciation from the miles you're putting on it. Whereas if I sit here, I already bought all this setup, I have no recurring costs to go out and film when I'm already here. I've already got everything, it's done. There's also a huge time constraint. So if I'm filming here, I can just come here and I can set up my camera, my lights and stuff, and I can just do this after work or after I have dinner, and I'm in a controlled environment, I have controlled lighting, so I can get pretty consistent quality, I can fit it into my schedule and get pretty good results because things are all in my control environmentally. If I'm out in the car, first I have to find a good filming location or a good driving road. Then I have to go there at a certain time of day because I don't have controlling of the light, so it's got to be a well-lit time of day where I'm getting light at the right angles and or the right amount of light, which means it's also weather dependent. Then you have to factor in, are other people, traffic and or police officers going to be there at that same time of day? Because if I go to this great driving road and the lighting is perfect, but it's rush hour traffic, suddenly I'm going to get stuck behind a car going 5 to 10 miles an hour under the speed limit, and it becomes a very boring video of me driving 25 miles an hour. But even if there's no car in front of me, if I mess up a shot, let's say I lift off the throttle too early, or the exhaust didn't sound quite right, or somebody pulls out in front of me, or someone cuts 3 lanes to the right with no turn signal. And to be clear, these are all things that have actually happened to me me while filming in a car before. If I want that shot to be in the end product, it means I have to turn around, I have to drive back, and I have to try it again. And if I do this a few times, especially in the same spot, if anyone lives nearby, they are going to call the cops on me. There's not a lot of Vipers around, as I've said in another video, so it makes you a lot more likely to get caught, and it makes it a lot easier for you to get called in. And that combines with the fact that people stereotype the crap out of you and automatically hate you for owning one of these. But then if I want to reshoot it, I have to turn around, drive back, and take that road again, or just cut out that section of video and hope I have enough time. Which means there is a very serious amount of reset time if you want to go back and you want to do multiple takes. Whereas if I'm doing this and I screw up, all I have to do is stop mid-sentence and restart the sentence, and there's no reset time and there's no cost of screwing up, and it makes things go a lot faster from both a filming perspective, but then also at the end I have less footage to deal with and to work through. I do not have the ability to constantly mess with the camera and play with settings when I am driving the Viper. If you slack off, that car will bite you, and it will bite you hard, and the consequences are pretty serious. Because of that, I can't really talk at the camera effectively when I'm driving it, so that makes it a little more challenging because I'm focused on the road. But I also can't just turn off the camera and restart it if I mess up. I just leave the thing continuously running because I don't want to be fiddling around reaching for a camera and adjusting the angle or whatever I need to do when I'm trying to drive and just, you know, not die. Whereas here, I can turn off the camera between takes. So at the end, I have a third of the footage that I've got to sift through to produce a video at the end that's the same length. And compounding the issue is I get screaming migraines courtesy of the head injury, especially when I use a computer too much, which means I can only edit in short bursts for like a certain period of time. Even if I just commute home from work or something and I take a couple fun corners, it's still never usually less than 45 minutes to an hour of footage. And if I do like a full day cruise, it can be a couple hours of footage, which means it takes me sometimes 5 to 10 sessions of what I can tolerate just to sift through the footage before I even start stitching it into like a video that makes sense. Whereas this, it's a lot less footage, I can get through it much more quickly. So for the same length of end video, it takes me legitimately about 30% of the time to film and edit it, which means I can produce 3 times the amount of content doing it in this format relative to trying to do it while driving, and it's still cheaper to do. So from both a cost perspective, a time perspective, and for me just not wanting to have severe migraines all the time, this is just a way more productive way for me to be able to share my experience of owning my dream car. But let's move on to number 6. I've said this before and I'll say it again. The Viper is terrible. Absolutely atrocious if you're trying to do content creation. I've stated this in a few other videos as well. The audio quality you get is terrible. The car is loud even with the top up. The wind noise is atrocious. It just drowns out everything that you would want to hear when you're driving this car. Or if you're just talking to the camera, it drowns out you as well. So you really can't do it either way. This car is also just demanding to drive. You need to focus on the driving experience, and you cannot really be worried about where the camera angle is, how it's positioned. You can't be messing with the settings. You have to focus on the road with this car. But beyond that, the limits of what this car can do are just so high that anything that you would do on the street is so well within its means that anything you capture on video just looks boring. It just does not look exciting. Anyone who has filmed action sports can tell you, things do not look as exciting on camera as they feel in reality. So as a result of that, not only does the video make it a lot less exciting to begin with, but the car handles it so well because you're so well within what it can do and what it can handle that it looks even more boring. Quick side note here is I was going to throw in a bunch of video examples of this, but I actually have so many of them that I need to make it a separate video because the runtime would have been way too long. So whenever that's done, I will link that in the description below, but for now, let's get back to this one. And the other problem this creates is that these clips are extremely short and you're getting to ludicrous speeds. The reality is, if I start at 0 miles per hour and I go up to 150 miles per hour in that car, the total video clip would be less than 20 seconds long. And that's if I spent the first 5 seconds looking around to make sure nobody was in my way and that there was no cops ahead. Like, that is how fast this car is. So on the road, you cannot push this car long enough to create a usable amount of content that can create a full video. It's literally just too fast. And as much as the internet might like to act like it's normal, it's not normal to just drive around through traffic at 150 miles an hour. That is not like a normal occurrence. But especially in a car like this, and with my history of a head injury, that is like one of the least safe things I can do, so my chances of death go up astronomically if I were to do that. So why would I risk my life, my job, getting arrested? Why would I risk all of these things just so I can cruise at a high speed for something that still does not look exciting? This brings me to number 7, which is that driving shots are not sustainable content. There's really no progression to it. If I do a couple hard pulls, the only thing I can do is do a harder pull, which means I either got to make the car faster, or alternatively, I just stay in it for longer. And like I said, you know, even if I'm in it to 160 miles per hour, it's still less than a 10-second clip. I don't have another person who has a camera who can do outside rolling shots. I don't have another car that's faster that can go up ahead of me and get a rolling shot up to 160 miles an hour or whatever. And like I said, it is asinine to think that cruising around at 150 miles an hour for a couple YouTube shots is a good idea. That's like just blatantly stupid. That's asking to get arrested. So as a result of that, there's only so far you can go with this kind of content, and there just isn't really a future in it long term. But beyond that is number 8, which is it's not even good content. Like I said, the camera really removes a lot of that excitement, so it's really exciting to experience it, but it's not exciting to watch it, and that's really what it comes down to. And I think the viewership numbers of the previous videos I've done reflect that. I have 2 channels where I post the Viper content, usually with a few variations. But on both channels, if I look at the data and I look at the viewership history for what people are actually watching and what they watch the most of, that is like the retention through the video, for both channels, the view count and the retention rate through the video is higher for the videos like this, where I'm just doing a discussion. For whatever reason, these type of videos just perform better than the driving videos. The highest performing videos I have of me driving the car are still just on par with like the average video like this. So it's not even that it's like great viewership, it's still just at best mediocre. Which brings us to number 9, which is that creating that kind of content just isn't enjoyable to me. In one of the first videos I ever made when I was getting this car, when I was doing the initial reveal, I said how I bought this car because it was my dream car, it's what I wanted, I got it for my enjoyment, and that creating content doing YouTube videos was an added bonus, but that wasn't my primary focus of why I got the car. At the end of the day, I like creating videos, I like filming and editing these and posting these, but this is a side hobby, it is not a source of income, and it's a side hobby to my primary hobby of driving the car, enjoying the car, working on the car. That is my number 1 hobby. Repairing it, keeping it looking good, driving it for my own enjoyment and having that fun driving experience, that is what I like about the car. And for me to have to fiddle with a camera, for me to have to worry about, oh, am I getting the right shot? Oh, is the lighting correct? To have to worry about that stuff instead of just focusing on what I'm experiencing as a driver, that does take away from the enjoyment that I get and from the escape that this car offers me when I go out and I drive it. And beyond that is it becomes a safety factor, is if I'm too worried about where the camera is and I'm always looking over to that, and if I'm worried about settings or I'm trying to fiddle with it, that does take my eyes off the road. So now I'm risking my safety for something that lessens my enjoyment of a vehicle when the whole purpose of me buying it in the first place was just to have fun with it. So when you put all these things together, it just doesn't really make sense for me to do in-car videos. What it comes down to is it's really high risk from every perspective, but there is literally no return. There's almost no upside. It takes away from why I bought the car. It takes away from what I enjoy doing. It's harder for me to do. It increases my headaches and my migraines. And then in return, I don't get better viewership. I don't get more subscribers from that kind of content. If I want to get to a point that I can quit my day job by doing this, quite frankly, that kind of content isn't what's going to get me there based on my previous viewership numbers. So if you're among the people who wants that to be the case, well, go find 10,000 people to watch my videos on repeat and subscribe to the channel. And if I can get people to subscribe only for those videos and comment below that that's the only thing they're here for, okay, in that case, maybe I can get to that point. But until that happens, the numbers don't lie. So I'm gonna keep driving the car how I want to, that I find it enjoyable, and I'll keep producing content like this. But quite frankly, this does better, it's cheaper to produce, it's way lower risk, and it's easier for me to make and edit. And quite frankly, if I push myself too hard with driving the car and then trying to edit more footage afterwards, all it's really going to do is prolong the recovery from my head injury, and that is my number 1 priority. Quite frankly, I care a lot more about my brain health than I care about whatever you have to write in the comments section. Sorry if that's not what you want to hear, but that's the truth. But either way, I hope you guys at least understand where I'm coming from. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.